Have you ever found yourself reliving in your mind a wrong financial decision from the past? Maybe a rushed investment, an impulsive purchase, a poorly calculated loan, or even the trust you placed in someone who failed to keep their promise. The truth is that after 40, many of us carry financial scars. And along with those marks comes something that can feel even heavier than the debt itself: guilt. Guilt is sneaky. It shows up when you look at your bank statement and think, "I should have been more careful." It surfaces when you compare your life to that of someone who made better choices, and it intensifies when you imagine what your life could look like today if you had chosen differently. But does this guilt really help us prosper, or does it trap us in a cycle of suffering and stagnation? Guilt, in essence, is an emotion that alerts us to something we believe we did wrong. From a psychological standpoint, it has a purpose: to lead us toward reflection and repair. However, when we fail to transform this emotion into learning, it becomes crystallized. Instead of being an impulse for change, guilt turns into chains around our ankles. It's like trying to swim to the surface while carrying a bag of rocks tied to your body. And what happens? You sink. Many men and women over 40 don't sink because of a lack of ability, but because they don't know how to deal with the guilt of past financial decisions. And ironically, the more they sink, the harder it becomes to start over. But where does this guilt come from? The origins are multiple. In part, they come from our upbringing. Many of us were taught to associate money with morality. Spending too much is a sin. Losing money is a sign of foolishness. Asking for help is shameful. This cultural inheritance blends with social pressure. When we see people our age who appear to have prospered more, comparison arises. Why didn't I succeed? What did I do wrong? And then there's the weight of responsibility. At 40 or 50 years old, it's no longer just about you. There's family, children, grandchildren, maybe employees or dependents. Every wrong decision seems to multiply its weight because it affects not only your life, but also the lives of those you love. The result? A heart loaded with guilt. Science also helps us understand this process. Neuroscience research shows that guilt activates specific areas of the brain, such as the medial prefrontal cortex, which is linked to judgment and self-awareness. This explains why, when we feel guilty, we get trapped in endless internal dialogues, as if we were on trial inside our own heads. In addition, behavioral psychology studies reveal that financial guilt creates a type of decision-making paralysis. People who feel guilty avoid making new investment or career decisions, precisely out of fear of making another mistake. It's like driving while only looking in the rearview mirror. You can't see the road ahead, only the mistakes already made behind you. And that blocks prosperity. If we look at Hawkins' scale, which classifies states of consciousness in levels of energy, we will see that guilt sits at one of the lowest rungs, vibrating alongside emotions like shame and apathy. On this scale, guilt appears as a field that drains vitality, steals courage, and prevents movement. As long as you remain in guilt, your energy turns against yourself. It's like rowing a boat against the current, but when you decide to release that emotion, you begin to rise on the scale, from guilt to acceptance, from acceptance to courage, from courage to enthusiasm. Prosperity only opens when you rise to a higher level. That is why overcoming guilt is not just about easing the heart. It's about creating space for life to prosper. And how, then, do you overcome guilt? The first step is to recognize that you are human. Everyone makes mistakes. Men and women who today are seen as symbols of success also stumbled. Walt Disney, for example, declared bankruptcy before creating the empire we know. Steve Jobs was fired from the very company he founded, only to return later and transform it into one of the most valuable in the world. In the financial world, how many renowned investors have admitted to losing millions in wrong decisions? The difference was never about never making mistakes, but about learning not to let guilt turn into a prison. The second step is to turn mistakes into lessons. This means looking back with intelligent questions, not punitive ones. Instead of saying, "How could I be so stupid?" ask, "What can this experience teach me?" The first question sinks you into shame. The second opens doors to new paths. The third step is to create new experiences of victory. Guilt feeds on the past, but confidence is built in the present. That's why every small financial victory counts. Saving 5% of what you earn, paying off a debt, resisting an impulsive purchase, investing in knowledge, all of these chip away at the power of guilt and strengthen your self-confidence. The fourth step is to forgive yourself. And here lies something profound. Forgiving yourself does not mean forgetting or justifying. It means freeing yourself from the weight, understanding that you did the best you could with the level of awareness you had at the time. So do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. That is the path of maturity. The reasons for overcoming guilt are countless. First, because it drains your vital energy. Second, because it blocks new opportunities. People trapped in guilt avoid taking risks, and, because of that, let opportunities slip away that could have changed their lives. Third, because it corrodes relationships. How many families live under silent tension because of financial mistakes from the past? When you free yourself, you not only prosper financially but also create lighter environments for yourself and for others. And finally, overcoming guilt is about opening space for prosperity, because prosperity is expansion and guilt is contraction. Real-life examples are everywhere. In 2008, during the global financial crisis, millions of people lost their homes, jobs, and investments. Many carried guilt for years. Yet some turned that experience into a new beginning. Stories of entrepreneurs who went bankrupt and then rebuilt their fortunes show that prosperity does not depend on the absence of mistakes, but on the ability to rise again. One famous case is that of Henry Ford. Before becoming one of the greatest names in the automotive industry, Ford faced bankruptcies and saw his early ventures collapse. Imagine the guilt he could have carried for losing money, disappointing investors, and even losing faith in himself at times. But instead of allowing himself to be paralyzed, he turned every mistake into learning. He persisted, refined his vision, and with resilience founded the Ford Motor Company, revolutionizing the way the world moves. His story proves that guilt can be fuel for innovation and prosperity if used in the right way. And I ask you, what guilt do you still carry when it comes to money? Do you still blame yourself for a poorly managed inheritance? For not having saved enough in the past? For a business partnership that didn't work out? Or perhaps for not having given your children the life you wanted for them? And is that guilt helping you today? Or is it only draining your energy and preventing you from living in peace? Think about that. Because every time you cling to guilt, you waste energy on what cannot be changed. But every time you release that emotion, you make room for what can still be built. Every failure carries within it the seed of an equivalent benefit. Studies show that when we change the emotions tied to a past event, we reconfigure the connections in the brain and literally change our biology. In other words, when you reframe guilt, you not only improve your emotional state, but also create new possibilities for your mind and your life. Science confirms this, philosophy supports it, and spirituality embraces this path. And it is you who decides whether or not to follow it. Therefore, the message is clear. After 40, there is no more time to waste in the prison of guilt. The past has already happened. What remains is the power to choose how you will live from this moment forward. You are not alone. Millions of people your age have already faced the same dilemma. Some stayed trapped in guilt and lost precious years. Others chose to break free, to learn from their mistakes, and to start over. The question is, which group do you want to be in? Life can still be abundant, prosperous, and meaningful if you decide to release the weight you carry. The conclusion is simple, yet powerful. Guilt does not pay debt. It does not generate income. It does not attract prosperity. What pays debt is discipline. What generates income is learning. What attracts prosperity is a mind free to create. So, choose. Release the guilt, embrace the lesson, and give yourself the chance to prosper in the wisest and most mature stage of your life. Because it is never too late to start over. It is never too late to prosper. And it is never too late to live with lightness, peace, and abundance. If you liked it, show it with a like. Comment what you think, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe with the notifications on. Knowledge only matters when you take action. Check out the link below in the first comment and take the next step.